Professor Samuel Hayes squinted through the dusty windshield. The Texas sun beat down, baking the landscape into a shimmering mirage. Heat waves danced across the barren plains, distorting the horizon. Samuel adjusted his glasses, his discomfort growing with each passing mile. He longed for the cool, comforting shadows of his university library. Samuel had been reluctant to leave the familiarity of his academic life, but his sister's plea for help had been impossible to ignore. Her husband, stationed at a remote military base, had fallen ill. With no one else to care for their two young children, Samuel was the only one left to help. The drive, however, was proving to be more arduous than he imagined. The GPS had died miles back, leaving him navigating by a tattered paper map. The silence of the desolate landscape pressed in on him, broken only by the hum of his aging sedan. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the desert, Samuel noticed something unusual in the distance. A faint, rhythmic flashing light flickered on the horizon. Intrigued, he veered slightly off the main road. His curiosity piqued. The flashing light grew stronger as Samuel drove closer, pulsing like a beacon in the fading light. He strained his eyes, trying to make out the source. Was it a distress signal? A weather station? He had never seen anything like it in this desolate expanse. His academic mind, trained to analyze and dissect, whirred with possibilities. Logic dictated that he should turn back, stick to the main road and reach his destination before nightfall. Yet, an undeniable pull drew him toward the mysterious light. Samuel chided himself for his impulsiveness. He was a man of reason, not adventure. But something about the stark beauty of the desert, the vastness of the sky above, awakened a long-dormant sense of wonder within him. He pressed on, the tires of his car crunching on the gravel road. The flashing light grew steadily brighter, illuminating the landscape with an eerie glow. As he rounded a bend, his heart skipped a beat. There, nestled amongst a cluster of rocky hills, was a sight he never expected to see. A massive metallic structure rose from the desert floor. It was unlike anything Samuel had ever seen before. Its sleek, angular design seemed jarringly out of place in the rugged landscape. The setting sun glinted off its surface, revealing panels of what appeared to be some kind of advanced camouflage. The flashing light emanated from a tall tower at the center of the complex. It pulsed with an intensity that made Samuel's eyes water. He shielded his face with his hand, his mind racing. What could this place possibly be? As he drove closer, he noticed something else peculiar. The camouflage panels, designed to blend seamlessly with the environment, were cracked and peeling in several places. It was as if something had impacted them with tremendous force. A sense of unease settled over Samuel. He pulled his car to a stop a safe distance away, his instincts screaming at him to turn back. This was no ordinary military base. The advanced technology, the secretive location, the damaged exterior, it all pointed to something far more clandestine. The desert wind whipped around him, carrying with it the faintest of sounds. A low hum, almost imperceptible, emanated from the structure. It vibrated through the ground, sending shivers down Samuel's spine. He stepped out of his car, the silence of the desert pressing in on him once more. The air was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken secrets. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. His gaze swept the perimeter of the complex, searching for any signs of life. But the only movement he could see was the relentless flickering of the light and the dust devils dancing across the barren landscape. He took a hesitant step forward, drawn by an irresistible urge to know more. What was this place? And what had happened here? His curiosity, always his greatest strength and his most dangerous flaw, had gotten the better of him once again. Section 5. An unexpected encounter. As Samuel crept closer, a harsh voice shattered the silence. "Hold it right there, identify yourself." A figure emerged from the shadows of the complex, his silhouette stark against the setting sun. He was dressed in full combat gear, his face obscured by a helmet visor. He raised his weapon, aiming it directly at Samuel's chest. Samuel froze, his blood turning to ice. His mind raced, struggling to process the situation. I'm lost," he stammered, his voice trembling. "My car broke down. I saw the light and—" "Don't move," the figure barked, his voice laced with suspicion. "One wrong move and I'll shoot." Two more figures materialized from the complex, flanking the first. They moved with a practiced precision that sent chills down Samuel's spine. He had stumbled upon something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Please, Samuel pleaded, his voice cracking with fear. I'm just a professor. I don't mean any harm. The soldier in the center lowered his weapon slightly, but his stance remained guarded. He gestured towards Samuel with his gun. Hands where I can see them. Now! Samuel slowly raised his hands, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never felt so vulnerable, so utterly out of his depth. The soldiers approached cautiously, their eyes scanning his every move. What are you doing here? One of the flanking soldiers demanded, his voice muffled by his helmet. Samuel tried to explain about his sister, about the military base, but the words caught in his throat. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, their suspicions growing with each passing second. He's lying, one of the soldiers muttered, his hand hovering near his holster. He's a spy. Before Samuel could protest, rough hands grabbed him. They bound his wrists together with zip ties, cutting off his circulation. Panic surged through him, choking off his breath. They dragged him towards the complex, his feet stumbling over the uneven terrain. The setting sun cast long, distorted shadows, transforming the soldiers into menacing figures of dread. He caught glimpses of strange symbols and markings etched into the walls of the complex, their meaning lost on him. They shoved him through a heavy steel door and into a dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and something else, something metallic and sharp. Fear gnawed at the edges of his mind. He had stumbled into a nightmare. The soldiers marched him down the corridor, their footsteps echoing ominously in the silence. They stopped abruptly in front of another steel door, this one unmarked and cold. Samuel's heart sank. He knew that whatever lay beyond that door, his life would never be the same. The door swung open, revealing a small, windowless room. A single bare bulb cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor. In the center of the room sat a metal chair, its surface scratched and dented. They threw Samuel into the chair, the impact knocking the breath out of him. His vision swam as they secured his wrists and ankles to the chair with heavy restraints. He struggled against their grip, but it was no use. One of the soldiers leaned in close, his breath hot on Samuel's face. "Who sent you?" he hissed. "What are you doing here?" Samuel tried to answer, but his voice came out as a dry croak. The soldiers exchanged frustrated glances. One of them produced a syringe filled with a viscous amber liquid. Terror surged through Samuel as he recognized the glint of the needle. "No!" he screamed, his voice raw with desperation. "I'm telling the truth! Project Nightfall, I swear it!" The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The soldiers froze, their expressions shifting from suspicion to disbelief. The soldier holding the syringe lowered it slowly, his eyes wide with astonishment. A tense silence descended upon the room. Samuel's heart pounded against his ribs, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had no idea what possessed him to utter those words, but he knew, instinctively, that he had stumbled upon something significant. The soldier who had threatened him with the syringe turned to his companions. "Get the commander," he ordered, his voice hushed with awe. "Now!" The other soldiers scrambled out of the room, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Samuel remained strapped to the chair, his mind reeling from the sudden shift in power. What was Project Nightfall, and why had the mention of it elicited such a reaction from his captors? Minutes later, the door swung open again, revealing a tall, imposing figure. He wore a simple black uniform devoid of any insignia or rank. His face was etched with lines of experience, his eyes sharp and calculating. He fixed his gaze on Samuel, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "Professor Hayes," the man said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I should have known." He turned to the soldiers, his expression hardening. "Release him. He's not who you think he is." The soldiers hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly began undoing Samuel's restraints. Samuel looked from the soldiers to the man in black, his confusion mounting. "Who are you?" he croaked, his voice hoarse. The man in black smiled thinly. "Professor," he said, extending a gloved hand. "Welcome to Project Nightfall. I believe you have something that belongs to me." As Samuel stared at the man's outstretched hand, a chilling realization washed over him. He wasn't a prisoner here. He was in charge.